Welcome back everybody to another episode of AA Entertainment. This video is going to be in 4 parts and I'm really excited about it. This is something I've been wanting to do for the longest time. So for today and the next few days, I will be breaking down my top 20 favorite films of all time. At number 20, Artificial Intelligence. I ain't gonna lie, I was actually led as balls to this party. Solely in fact I replaced E.T. with this as soon as I started writing today's script. Artificial Intelligence is through and through a Stanley Kubrick film and was supposed to be his next project following Eyes Wide Shut because he felt as though Steven Spielberg was more fit to direct the sentimental film. We all know and love the story of Pinocchio and the Blue Fairy, but this takes that original story to the next 50 levels. The year is 2142, and in order to have children you need a permit, and even then you're limited to 1 child. After the son of Henry and Monica is terminally ill, a corporation that specializes in artificial intelligence create groundbreaking artificial intelligence technology called David, a robot that has the ability to love and show human emotions. Right off the bat, the question is raised, even though the robot can love, can humans come to love it? Spoiler alert, no they do not. David is abandoned in the forest and is left to fend for himself with the help of his super toy and conscience Teddy. Things get even worse when humans feel threatened by the artificial intelligence advancements and round up strays for flesh fairs where they are destroyed. David makes a new friend in Jude Law's Gigolo Joe, who is programmed to love women but also takes the role of David's best friend and helps him find the mysterious Blue Fairy who can help David become a real boy so he can get Monica to love him. Artificial intelligence really caught me out of left field and raises so many moral and philosophical questions. Although people claim Spielberg changed it to fit in more with his style, he only really filled in the blanks and made it as close to Kubrick's original vision as possible, including the ending. The film has elements that strongly resemble Kubrick's filmography, most notably The Shining, A Clockwork Orange, Eyes Wide Shut, and even Barry Lyndon. And even though we all know Midas' taste for CGI, I will say that the world created by Kubrick and Spielberg really does its job by making me feel alienated, isolated, and yet raptured all at once. At number 19, Tess. Based on the Thomas Hardy novel, before Sharon Tate's murder at the hands of the Manson family, she gifted a copy of the book to her husband, Roman Polanski, telling him it would make a great movie. Bringing his wife's wishes to light, Roman Polanski brought the immortal tragic classic to the big screen in 1979 with the amazing Nastassja Kinski in the titular role. After her drunken father is tricked by an anthropologist into thinking that his family bears roots in royalty, he and his wife send their eldest and beautiful daughter Tess to their cousins to claim their heritage. While working for her so-called cousins, Alec d'Urberville rapes her and leaves her with child. This leads to a snowball effect of devastation, heartbreak, and poverty. This is one of those films I appreciate more and more each and every time I watch it, to the point I forced my 2 roommates in a dank and dingy hostel in Israel to sit through the 3-hour film while drunk. The journey of the gentle and innocent Tess, as she is put through absolute emotional and physical hell, is absolutely harrowing, combined with the breathtaking music and cinematography, which ideally contrasts to the story. Also, this is what Quentin Tarantino was referencing when Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate purchased the book and his latest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. At number 18, The Cat and the Canary. In my opinion, The Cat and the Canary is a quintessential haunted house movie. As hard as it was for me to pick a film from this era and genre of film, it swiftly became a no-brainer when I look back at the hundreds of times I watched and rewatched this ghoulish classic. Coming off of the international success of his equally notable Wax Works, Paul Lanny took the director's chair to bring the game-changing style of German Expressionism cinema to US audiences, flipping the world of cinema on its head, creating the spine-tingling silent horror classic. After the wealthy and eccentric invalid Cyrus West is driven to the brink of madness by his greedy relatives who taunted him like cats on a canary, his death brings his few remaining relatives to his house on a dark and stormy night for the reading of his will on the 20th anniversary of his death. The envelope is opened, and Annabelle West, the final remaining relative bearing his name, is to receive his full inheritance. The catch is, she must be thoroughly examined by a psychologist to declare her sane. This seems to be easier said than done when the lawyer is pulled behind a bookcase and is murdered. The guests are set on edge even more so when a guard from a local insane asylum makes a surprise visit, suspecting that an escaped lunatic who has a tendency to tear people to shreds and eats them like a cat would do to a canary, is hiding in the estate. With the German expressionism, dark and spooky corridors, terrifying story, and shadows, The Cat and the Canary has always been a favorite of mine and never fails to scare the hell out of me. At number 17, Valerie and Her Week of Wonders. I fucking love dark fantasy movies and literature. Look no further than Pan's Labyrinth, Coraline, Corpse Bride. For some reason, when you introduce elements of horror into a world of fantasy or vice versa, the two go together like chocolate and peanut butter and just fucking work, creating something entirely new, uncanny, and overall amazing. And in my opinion, out of every single movie I have ever seen, none have done it better than this underrated 1970 Czech masterpiece. Being one of the last films of the Czech new wave of cinema, Valerie is a young girl who lives alone with her grandmother and is coming of age. Given I've never experienced what it's like to become a woman, but Valerie's journey is plagued with macabre characters such as a human weasel, vampires, and predatory priests. Oh my! Her only trusted companion is her love interest Ulrich, a slave to the weasel who frequently tortures him. And things just get a whole lot stranger from there. I first saw this movie on television when I was a sophomore in high school on a snow day, and it made me trip balls. But when I found it in the Criterion Collection, I must have watched it at least 1,000 times. The music and imagery go together hand in hand, creating a strange and frightening yet beautiful and enchanting world. And even though I'm not a woman, I can still identify with Valerie, being unsure of who you can trust and whether that be family, religion, politics, you name it. And seriously speaking, although I haven't kept count, I wouldn't be surprised if I actually watched this movie at least 100 times. The imagery, characters, and music create something going above and beyond anyone's imagination, creating a world of pure beauty and the macabre. I guess what I'm really trying to say is, if you haven't seen this hidden gem, go fucking watch it right now. At number 16, Doctor Strangelove. One of the many Kubrick films to be featured on this list, Doctor Strangelove, or How We Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, started off as a serious drama revolving around the Cuban Missile Crisis based on the novel Red Alert by Peter George. However, as Kubrick was doing his research on the subject, he swiftly came to the realization of just how ridiculous the entire situation was, encouraging him to change the tone of a white-knuckle war drama to a comedy, even featuring slapstick. Much like Tess, this is one of those movies I appreciate more and more each time I watch it because despite the obvious comedic elements, Kubrick being Kubrick has a ton of jokes within the details. U.S. Air Force General Jack Ripper has completely lost his marbles and decides to send his bomber wing to completely destroy the USSR, causing both the US and Russia to launch into an all-out war. Peter Sellers stars in 3 roles. President Martin Muffley, who, unfortunately from what I've seen, wouldn't be the worst president of the United States. Air Force Captain Lionel Mandrake, and the nefarious titular Dr. Strangelove, giving each character 110%. In hopes of easing tensions, the President of the United States has invited Russian Ambassador Alexei Desadetsky and former Nazi scientist Dr. Strangelove, who stands out like a sore thumb with his unsettling voice and even more unsettling right arm that seems to act on its own free will, into the war room. Meanwhile, Captain Mandrake is stuck with the sadistic General Jack Ripper. And that's just Peter Sellers with Kubrick's only straight-up comedy. He went all out, casting only the best of the best, including George C. Scott as General Buck Tuggerson, Keenan Wynn as Colonel Bat Guano, James Earl Jones in an early role as Lieutenant Lothar Zorg, who is on board with Slim Pickens as the cowboy Major King Kong, fitted with a cowboy hat and tasked with nuking the USSR, which leads to one of the single most iconic scenes in all of cinematic history. Dr. Strangelove is absolutely hilarious, insightful, and even features 2 of my favorite lines in movie history. "You can't fight in here, this is the war room," and "You're gonna have to answer to the Coca-Cola company."